Hey everyone, I've heard that sharing here can be really helpful, and I'm hoping that's true for me. I believe something from my wife's past has resurfaced to haunt me, and I need to talk about it with strangers. Even though I suspect my wife is having a physical affair, there's a chance I might be overreacting. With everything happening, it seems like my wife has been unfaithful. I'm a 31-year-old man, and my wife, who's 30, and I live in Detroit. We've always had a great marriage. About 11 years ago, while visiting my wife at her parents' house, her best friend confronted me. She asked why I hadn't proposed to my wife yet. My wife, who we'll call Claire, just watched silently, clearly supporting her friend's grilling. I quickly got the message. Because I loved her deeply, I was actually happy they felt that way. It motivated me to start making plans to marry her. 2 years later, we got married, and now have 2 beautiful daughters. Getting married was one of my happiest days, and I've always aimed to be a good husband and father. My wife wanted a big wedding, and many people attended, including some of our relatives from Puerto Rico. Although we weren't wealthy, we provided well for our kids, who were always well cared for. My wife was an amazing person, smart, fun, and with a great sense of humor, which you don't always expect from such a beautiful woman. She was a good mom, and our daughters, who are 7 and 4 years old, love and respect her. Our oldest even imitates her, which I always tell her. She was gorgeous with a pretty smile, brown eyes, and an amazing figure. She struggled to fit into jeans sometimes, and whether in a sexy dress or tights, she looked stunning. My mom thought she had an ego, but I didn't mind. I work in a renovation project facility, and my wife owns a nail salon, which suits her because she's always been into fashion, even though she denies it. She had to have the latest trends, like the newest iPhone or designer clothes, which made me roll my eyes, but it was her money. However, when we had kids, she had to cut back on her spending. Instead of keeping up with her glamorous lifestyle, she now focuses more on our daughters. She's okay with last year's iPhone model and less designer clothing, opting for Disney-themed outfits our daughters love. She only wears her good clothes on special occasions. I've had to splurge less too, but it's fine because our kids are more important. My family is my priority. Everything seemed fine until we ran into her old friend's ex. We were at the supermarket when our oldest reminded us about her favorite Pop-Tarts. My wife sent me with her to pick them out, and when we came back, we saw my wife laughing and chatting with a guy. My daughter interrupted them with the Pop-Tarts, and my wife introduced me to him. She said he was the ex-boyfriend of her old friend, who I'll call Tracy. I didn't remember Tracy at first, but then I recalled she used to work with my wife before she started her own business. This guy, let's call him Joey, seemed happy to see us and was friendly, so I didn't think much of it. My wife and Joey caught up a bit more, and it felt awkward seeing her so happy to see him. After signaling it was time to cook dinner, Joey laughed and said it was good to see us. On the ride home, my wife expressed how surprised she was to see him at the supermarket and mentioned she was even more surprised that Tracy and Joey had broken up. When I asked when she last spoke to Tracy, she said about 4 years ago. Initially, I thought that was the end of it, but as time went on, I noticed Joey and my wife stayed in touch. They talked on the phone and interacted on social media. She mentioned me occasionally, so I felt included and didn't worry. Their conversations became more frequent and longer, even into late hours. I grew suspicious on Super Bowl Sunday. My wife was talking to Joey on the phone when I asked her a question. She answered me, then a bit later said Joey wanted to talk to me. Surprised, I took the phone, and he asked if I was going to watch the Super Bowl. I told him I planned to, and he laughed, saying he was too, and suggested watching the game together. I mentioned we'd have a bunch of kids over, and he laughed, saying never mind, then passed the phone back to my wife. I thought that was it, but a couple of hours later, my wife said Joey wanted to talk to me again. He invited me to a Super Bowl party a friend of his was having. My wife offered to call her brother to pick up his kids early so we could go. After he got the kids, we got ready and arrived around halftime. At the party, I learned it was being thrown by a diehard Cincinnati Bengals fan who wanted them to lose, and he got his wish when they lost. The guy's loudmouth stopped as the Bengals were defeated. After sharing a good laugh at the guy's expense, we all enjoyed the get-together. It was at this point that I started getting suspicious because of how my wife was interacting with Joey. I didn't like how she was all up in his face, and I felt excluded from their conversations. I thought maybe I wasn't being social enough, and needed to insert myself into the conversation more. At some point, I asked Joey why he and Tracy broke up. He explained that he and Tracy were just casually dating and weren't serious. My wife laughed and said she was surprised because Tracy really liked him. After a while, I said I needed another Smirnoff and went to the porch where the cooler was. After mingling with some people on the porch, I went back inside to look for my wife. I saw them talking in a corner and felt a weird vibe. Joey was a little too close to her, acting all predatory, and she was giggling shyly while he held her hand. She then walked into the kitchen, and Joey followed, staring at her butt. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I moved closer to get a better look. My wife was talking to some girl by the sink, her back turned to Joey. The girl noticed Joey staring at my wife and seemed to tell her. My wife looked back, smiled at him, then continued her conversation, knowing Joey was watching her. She was acting like she was flaunting her body for him. Usually, I love how my wife dresses, but now I felt paranoid. She kept looking back and smiling at Joey, who was still glancing at her in her yoga pants. My wife didn't budge, as if she was saying, "I know you want me." They tried to play it off, but anyone paying attention could see what was happening. I hoped I wasn't seeing what I thought I was seeing. The girl my wife was talking to said something, and they both walked back into the living room. My wife saw me and asked what the guys on the porch were talking about. I told her it was nothing much and that I was ready to go. She wanted to stay longer, but I reminded her that her brother was still with our kids, waiting for us so he could leave. After saying goodbye to Joey and everyone, we headed home since we both had to work the next day. On the ride back, I had to tell her what I saw. In the car, I said it looked like Joey was trying to hit on her. She laughed it off and acted like I was crazy, saying I was wrong. I let it go but decided to pay more attention to them. It was clear he was looking at her backside. The more I observed, the more suspicious I became. She always had her phone, constantly brought up Joey to me and her best friend Claire, and started holding on to her phone even more. She talked to Joey late into the night. One night, I asked if she was still talking to Joey, and she just shot me a look and said she was. She hung up the phone 5 minutes later. I got tired of her late-night conversations and asked her to talk to him during the day. She said she talks to Claire during the day and laughed, saying I was acting paranoid. She dismissed everything I said, claiming I was worried about nothing. Eventually, my questions made her stop bringing up Joey. I guess she thought it would calm me down, but it didn't. 2 days ago, I started believing the worst. On my wife's day off, she said she was going to Claire's house to do her mom's nails. Since I knew about this beforehand, I wasn't suspicious. Later that night, my youngest daughter asked if we could eat pizza, but I told her mom was cooking dinner. She fussed, and since I was in the mood for pizza too, I decided to call my wife to tell her she didn't need to cook. When I called, it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and the same thing happened. I wondered why her phone was off. This had never happened before. I waited half an hour and called again, still voicemail. I decided to call Claire. She picked up and said my wife had left. I mentioned she was supposed to do Claire's mom's nails, but Claire said my wife got a call and left. I asked who called, and Claire didn't know but was mad that my wife had to tell her mom to come by her nail salon the next day. This surprised me because Claire was like a sister to her. Hearing this was just messed up. After hanging up with Claire, I called around, but no one had called my wife. To me, this left only Joey. I got so angry I couldn't believe this was happening. At the Super Bowl party, Joey had mentioned where he stayed, but I didn't know the exact address, just the street. If my wife was there, I knew he was doing her. Grabbing my keys, I was about to leave when I remembered my kids were still in their room playing. I called my mom to see if she could babysit, but she didn't pick up. My best friend, let's call him Jack, was my last option. I called him and he picked up. I asked what he was doing, and he said his girl was cooking dinner. I told him I needed a favor, and he asked what it was. I told him I thought my wife was cheating on me. Jack went silent, shocked by what I said. He asked if I was serious, and I told him everything. He said he couldn't come and watch the kids, but suggested I bring them to him. This pissed me off because he lived on the other side of town. After getting the kids ready, it took about 30 minutes to get to Jack's place. He asked if I knew where Joey lived. I told him the street, and he looked at me like I was crazy. The street Joey lived on was a long avenue. Jack asked if I was really going to drive up and down the street to find him, and I said yes. As I was about to leave, Jack stopped me and suggested using his car instead. He reasoned that if I was wrong and my wife saw my car, she could call me a crazy husband, but at least she wouldn't recognize his car right away. He handed me the keys and warned me not to do anything crazy. He asked if I wanted him to come with me, but I said no. It was already messed up enough that he was involved. He took the kids, and I made my way to find my wife. I hoped I wasn't too late and could catch her in the act, but I really wished I was wrong. However, my instincts as a man told me otherwise. After a long drive, I reached Joey's street and started looking for my wife's silver Kia. It was a terrible neighborhood, but I didn't care at this point. All the suspicious behavior from my wife led me to this moment. I hoped I wouldn't find her car, but eventually I did. Not only did I see her car, but I also saw her and Joey. She was wearing a pink sweatsuit, and Joey had on nothing but a white tank top, shorts, and flip-flops. It looked like she was getting ready to leave, and I couldn't believe my eyes. He was practically naked, and again, he was too close to her. Driving past, I threw a fit in the car, repeating to myself that he had screwed her. I had no other explanation. I bet her phone magically worked now. Not only did I catch her all hugged up with this guy, but now I had to try and beat her home. When I got home, I was surprised to see that me and the kids had beaten her home with time to spare. After putting the kids to bed, I decided to wait up for my wife. Almost 40 minutes later, she came in, acting unhappy to be back. She looked at me briefly before walking right past and into the bedroom. Her silence blew my mind. I followed her into the bedroom and immediately asked why her phone was turned off. She claimed it never was and said her phone had died, needing to be charged. I asked where she had been, and she reiterated she was at Claire's house. I told her Claire said she had left, and she brushed it off irritably, saying that didn't mean she wasn't there. It baffled me that I was going through this. I asked if she had left Claire to be with Joey, and she hesitated before admitting she did. I pressed her, but she dismissed it, saying she was tired of me having a problem with Joey and just wanted to leave it alone because she was exhausted. She asked if the kids had eaten, and I told her we went out to eat. Without further question, she went into the living room to watch TV and be on her phone. After that night, she wasn't the same wife I knew. She stopped talking to me, was always texting on her phone in the dining room, and looked at me like she wanted to escape but couldn't. This was BS because she acted like I had done something wrong, even though all I did was cater to her. Who has their phone die in the middle of the day anyway? I'm really at a loss and need to make a decision based on my gut feelings. I don't know if she cheated, but her behavior has been full of red flags. I hope I'm overreacting, but the signs are there, especially at the Super Bowl party, where Joey had been looking at her butt and she allowed it, and now she's meeting him secretly at his house. He has to be sleeping with her. I will try to update once I find something solid, but I really need to know if I'm overreacting. Our first response comes from Freddie 1177. Wow, really? Wow. Pack her a bag and have her call Joey to tell him she's coming to stay. No remorse, no sorry, and lies again? Wow. See a lawyer, let her know, and have her served. If she pulls her head out, you can always call it off, but the ball has to be in her court to fix this. Act quickly and decisively. Letting it drag on will end in disaster and pain. Good luck. Her next thought comes from Dakota69. She cheated and is still cheating. Walk away from her and set up co-parenting. Your kids are now being raised in a very toxic household. One more comment before moving on. Seriously, brother, come on, really? First off, why did you let her entertain this man? Why did you go to this party? Are you truly that blind? Or what's wrong with you to let her constantly disrespect you? They are cheating and you are fine with it? You have children to think of. Divorce her and kick her out. She can go screw Joey without disrespecting you. Don't play blind. Don't stay for the kids. They don't need a disrespectful expletive for a mother. You need to stop thinking she's someone she's not. You've likely been ignoring her disrespectful behavior for a long time. Your marriage wasn't perfect. She wasn't the perfect wife or mother. If she was, she wouldn't be destroying her family for a dick. Do not give her any chances. She doesn't deserve it. Choose you. Choose your self-respect and self-worth. She's an expletive and likely always has been one. You just don't want to see or accept it. Update. My wife might have cheated with her friend's ex-boyfriend. I want to thank everybody for their support and honesty. People here have been guiding me through this, and it's been helpful. I was going to post this weekend, but so much has happened that I had to post this update today. This is a crazy time for me, and it's blowing me away how right you all are about my wife. At the beginning of this year, my wife ran into her friend Tracy's ex-boyfriend Joey at the supermarket. When she introduced me to him, I didn't think much of it. It seemed like she had just reunited with an old friend. But she was a little too excited to see him again. After that, they kept in touch, and it quickly became too much. She started showing all the red flags, and it looked very suspicious. They'd talk on the phone for hours, like each other's pics on Facebook, and he started calling late at night. When I told her this looked inappropriate, she said I was overreacting. She would laugh and giggle with him, and even tried teaching him Spanish since we're Puerto Rican. What was worse was at the Super Bowl party Joey invited us to. I caught him checking out my wife, especially her backside. She had the kind of butt that if she walked past, you'd wait a few seconds and then turn to look at it. Eventually, she became aware of it, or even caught him, but didn't do or say anything about it. When I told her he was checking her out, she dismissed it. It got to the point where I had to track her down because she wasn't where she claimed to be. She was supposed to go to Claire's house to do Claire's mom's nails, but flaked on her after Joey called. Her phone went straight to voicemail, so I assumed she was with Joey. I had to call my best friend Jack to borrow his car to find her. Driving down Joey's street, I found them, and it bothered me that he practically had no clothes on. He was wearing just a white tank top, shorts, and flip-flops. Driving back to Jack's house, he asked me what I saw. I told him, and even he admitted he thought Joey had screwed her. I agreed, especially since Joey had almost no clothes on. If I was dressed like that and someone came over, my wife would tell me to put some clothes on. Joey looked like he had just woken up or something. Jack asked what I planned on doing, but I didn't know at the time. After thanking Jack for babysitting my kids, I surprisingly made it home almost 40 minutes before my wife did. When she came back, she even looked guilty. When I asked where she had been, she was super vague and wouldn't give me a direct answer. Eventually, I had to drop it, especially since I didn't catch them in the act as I planned. People here said it would get worse, and it did. Now she looks at me like I'm her prison guard and doesn't want to talk to me. She only talks to her friends on her phone, doesn't interact with the kids, and treats them like they're a chore. She just sits in our dining room area and texts. I didn't even know what to say to her. What's worse is that thanks to my schedule, I couldn't really stop her from cheating. My wife knew my daily routine, and I'm sure Joey did too. Between my job, taking care of our kids, and obligations to my mom, they apparently met up while I was out. I know this because when I would try to call her, she never answered. My wife's schedule is more flexible than mine, especially since she owns her nail salon. Whenever I got home, my wife wouldn't be there, especially if she didn't have to pick up the kids from school. When she came back, she was vague about where she had been. This really messed with my mind and gave me anxiety. I would be with my mom, thinking about my wife riding some guy's meat. This has been on my mind ever since she left Joey's house that night. If it wasn't for this community, I would have been much worse. If I had been blindsided by this, I don't know what my mindset would have been. But after being told to calm down and start monitoring them for the truth, I had to man up. After doing just that, I got the truth and found out today that yes, Joey was screwing my wife, and my plan worked out perfectly. That weekend after work, I bought a voice-activated recorder and put it in her car. First, I tested it out when I took the kids to eat McDonald's, and it worked well. After that, I put it in my wife's car, hoping it would pick up any talk or incriminating conversations. Doing this made me feel crazy, and I couldn't believe this was my life. The most important advice I got was to act like I wasn't concerned about Joey. It was a lie, but I needed to start getting used to it. Bringing him up and acting like everything was fine got her to ease up a little. It was hard, but it kept my mind on getting the truth. When I told Jack about this, even he thought I was a genius. A few days ago, I snuck out and retrieved the voice-activated recorder from her car and listened to what was on it. I heard a few things, but I definitely heard her talking with Joey. They were riding somewhere, and although the music was on, I could still make out what they were saying. He was definitely flirting with my wife, calling her sexy, and she was giggling. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but she wasn't stopping him. I heard him tell her to stop somewhere, and then it got silent for a minute. It sounded like a bunch of guys got in the car and they drove off. It became harder to hear them with everyone talking, but I heard him say he wanted to come over, and I heard my wife tell Joey she had to leave early, so come over. That was the end of the usefulness of the voice-activated recorder. They just talked and laughed, and one guy called Joey thirsty. I tried to figure out who my wife was talking about when she said someone was leaving early. I thought it might be Claire, but even though Claire was like a sister to her, it didn't seem like she told Claire about Joey. She definitely wasn't talking about her mom, so it had to be the girl who runs the salon with my wife. It didn't make much sense because she was a teenager learning to do nails there, but it was the best lead I had. I called up my friend Jack to see if we could swap cars for the day, and he agreed. After telling him what I heard, he was shocked and called her a high-priced hoe, hoping I'd catch her this time. Knowing my routine, she knew to leave after me. My mom's next-door neighbors needed help with their yard, so I couldn't cancel on my mom. I told her I'd only stay for a little while because I was tired from work. My mom wasn't happy about me leaving early, but her next-door neighbor said he could handle it. Around 9, I pulled up to my wife's shop when it was closing. It's located in a strip mall, so it was easy to hide among the other cars, especially since I was driving Jack's car. Inside, Joey was definitely there, and I was pissed to see I was right. No one was left inside except my wife, Joey, and let's call her Sherry. My wife was dressed to impress, and Joey was all over her. He had his arms wrapped around her while they talked. After about 20 minutes, they really got into it. Joey was kissing her neck and grabbing her butt, trapping her against the wall. Sherry just watched them. After about 5 minutes, Sherry must have said something about leaving, and they smiled and waved her off. Holding Joey's hand, they walked to the back where it looked like they were heading to the basement. I've been down to the basement area when my wife first started the salon, so I knew it was the only place in the back. She was looking for a bigger place to run her shop, wanting an office space since the current location wasn't high-end enough for her. If she knows anything, it's how to market something. I was so pissed off. I couldn't believe this woman would do this to me. After everything I've done for her, she would betray me like this. Joey was a real snake, and now I see why he never gave a good vibe. After grabbing my voice-activated recorder, I made my way over to the salon. Sherry had just finished grabbing her things, so I waited for her to come out before making my presence known. When I called out to her, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I told her not to lock the doors, and that I knew everything. She claimed she didn't know what I was talking about, but I told her I watched them the whole time. I called her a fat lying witch and we got into a huge argument. She said not to blame her for my wife screwing another man. I called her messy and told her to get out of my way. She said I wouldn't be able to catch them because the door was locked. I asked why they would lock the door if she already knew they were screwing, and she said they didn't want anyone else coming down. I pulled out my phone and called my wife while making my way to the back. Sherry decided to follow me. My wife didn't answer my call, so I banged on the basement door. It was locked, and I didn't know what was going on down there. But I knew if she didn't come up, we were over. After banging on the door 3 times and telling them to come up, they still didn't respond. Turning to Sherry, I asked how long she knew about this. Sherry swore she knew about Joey for about a month, and that my wife had started cheating with him recently. She said he came in during her break, and after a while they went down to the basement. The next day they talked about what happened. I asked if she knew Joey was Tracy's ex-boyfriend, and she said my wife told her. I told Sherry we had kids, and she said she didn't have anything to do with that. I said that's fine and that I'll be using what she said in court. When Sherry asked what I was talking about, I showed her the voice-activated recorder and told her she could go home now. Getting back in the car, I drove back to Jack's place, where he and his girlfriend consoled me after hearing what I saw. While Jack and I were talking, Claire called my phone. This was the last thing I needed, but I should have expected it. I decided to pick up, and she said my wife had told her everything and that my wife wanted to talk to me tomorrow. I told her to put my wife on the phone now, but Claire said she wouldn't let me talk to her because she knew I'd blow up. I insisted on speaking to my wife, but Claire refused, saying she would call the police if I came over and told me to wait until tomorrow. She promised my wife would call me, and they both wanted me to calm down. I said, yeah, whatever, and hung up. After coming back home with the kids, I got super emotional, and my anxiety started kicking in again. I still couldn't believe this was happening to me. Even after I did everything right with this woman, somehow, it went wrong. I thought after being married for this long, I wouldn't have to worry about this. The worst part is that this wasn't a one-time thing. He was screwing her consistently. Now my whole world is going to change. I can't wait to see what she has to say tomorrow. I will update after I hear what she has to say. The ball is in her court, and if I don't like what I hear, I'm getting a divorce. My mind is racing. I think it may have been a bad idea to leave Jack's house. I feel alone, but I had to post here since everyone wanted to know what my wife was doing. A first comment after that from Zach Taylor 05. There's nothing to say, but you need to divorce her. Yebone1 chimes in. You need to get out of reactionary mode and start being proactive about moving on with your own life. Sure, talk to her, but incorporate everything she says into your decision-making process. Don't wait for her for anything. Consult with an attorney, make plans for the kids. There's really not much else she can say at this point, and what she will say will be nothing more than excuses and blame shifting. Inspector Gadget 15 says, Bruh, what the F divorce is clearly the only way. Pick yourself. Respect your kids are watching. One more thought from Anonymous. No offense, but what exactly are you hoping to get out of the conversation? I feel like she's either just going to tell you she's ready for divorce or some BS. What's your endgame? Because you sound like you're willing to be convinced if you like what you hear. Last update. Hello everyone. I really want to thank everyone for their support these past couple of weeks. Everyone seemed really concerned about me talking to my wife after I caught her cheating, and assumed I was going to immediately reconcile with her after what she put me through. I can't lie. I did want to know what my wife could possibly say to justify her actions. I was in a bad state of mind, and kinda still am. Ever since me and my wife ran into Joey, who I can now call her affair partner, at the grocery store, things went south. It's hard to forgive that, especially since I had to practically chase this woman across the city. Now that I have multiple conversations on my voice-activated recorder, there's nothing anybody can tell me about what's been happening since the beginning of this year. Thanks to this community, I was able to kind of confront this, even though I may have stumbled a little at first. But I'm super embarrassed at how this ended. After I saw Joey and her kissing after hours in her nail salon, I got a call from her best friend Claire. She said my wife wanted to explain the next day, and I agreed to it. The next day came, and my wife never called me. That was fine with me, because I was in the middle of calling everybody to let them know about her cheating, and I called a lawyer. After talking to a recommended lawyer online, I was supposed to call him back because he was leaving the office at the time and had questions for me later. After that, I took my kids over to my mom's house because she demanded they stay with her for the weekend. My mom blamed this on me because I married her and said she didn't trust me with the kids right now. My aunt came in from the kitchen and asked why my mom was raising her voice. My mom explained it to my aunt, and she looked super shocked, throwing her hands up before sitting on the couch to unmute the TV. Even though my mom came down on me hard, I was happy she was taking the kids. I had a lot going on in my head, and being by myself helped me get it out. Since I was still angry when we arrived, my friend Jack called me and asked if I had spoken to my wife. I told him no, and that she was probably sucking some dick somewhere. He said she might not even call, which was fine with me, as I was just preparing to move on. On Saturday, while trying to clean my house, I heard my wife's keys in the door. I must not have been paying attention, because I should have heard her car pull up. My wife and her friend Claire walked in, catching me by surprise. She didn't look like her usual self, wearing a gray Nike sweatsuit, no makeup, and her hair held together by a rubber band. The shame on her face showed remorse, likely because she got caught. I wasn't used to seeing her like this. She was usually breathtaking. Maybe this was only a privilege for Joey now. She clearly liked the way he was checking her out at the Super Bowl party, especially when he was looking at her butt. My wife had what you'd call a booty, and just like other girls in yoga pants, I caught Joey trying to sneak looks at it. I think that's what started all of this and got them caught after I became suspicious. After walking into our house, Claire asked me to let my wife speak, and I agreed. Claire said something to my wife and went out on the porch. I told my wife I was surprised she came and even bothered to talk to me. She said she felt she needed to after I saw her and Joey at her salon. She said she was scared to come back home. She asked where the kids were, and I told her they were with my mom. She looked down as if that wasn't what she wanted to hear, and told me she was mad about me telling her co-owner of the nail salon, Sherry, to tell me everything about Joey. I told her that I didn't have to. After Sherry got caught, she immediately ratted her out to save her own skin. My wife said they got into an argument and Sherry hasn't come back to work. I told her that she got caught cheating and I don't care about Sherry having a big mouth. My wife threw up her hands and said I was right and that she didn't want to fight. She said she was sorry and didn't want me to find out about her cheating with Joey. I told her saying sorry wasn't going to make it okay and that she betrayed me. I asked her how she could parade this guy around me, acting like he's just a friend, and then throw our relationship in the garbage. She said she was sorry and that she let her fantasies with Joey get out of hand. She said when her friend Tracy from her old job was dating him, she always told my wife how great he was. She would always say how handsome he was and show my wife all the sexting she and Joey did while they were at work. The next day, Tracy and my wife would talk about it, and my wife liked it. She said when Joey came to their job to pick up Tracy, she thought he was handsome. After talking about Joey with Tracy, she knew she liked him. I asked if he said something to her at the time, and she said he complimented her a few times, and that was it. I told her I knew something was off, because when we ran into Joey at the supermarket, I remembered her giving him her phone number. She said he asked for it, and he began texting her and flirting again, which turned into sexting. She said after that, she started hanging out with him and some of his friends. I asked if that was the day she was supposed to be doing Claire's mom's nails at Joey's house, and I named his street to let her know I knew where he lived. She asked how I knew this, and I told her I went looking for her and saw her with him outside that night. I asked again if she screwed him, and all she could say was that she was sorry. She said when he called her, he said everyone was there hanging out, and he convinced her to ghost Claire and hang with them. When she got there, she waited for more people to show up, but Joey admitted he just wanted her alone. I asked why she didn't leave, and she said she knew what he wanted. She said he got all touchy and started kissing her, and things got out of hand. I called her a stupid witch and told her she screwed up our marriage. She said she was sorry. I told her I could never trust her again, and she said she wasn't asking me to. I asked what she meant by that, and she said she wanted to pursue a relationship with Joey. I told her she was freaking crazy, but she insisted. She said she always fantasized about Joey and didn't think it mattered until we ran into him that day. When he told her that he and Tracy weren't serious, it made her happy, especially after he started flirting with her again. She secretly hoped something would happen, and it did when she went to his house that night. She admitted that when he was screwing her, she wanted to feel bad, but she didn't. After that, he would call her to hang out, and it would happen spontaneously, and then become planned. She said she should have talked to me about it instead of going behind my back. She admitted that I didn't deserve it, and said this was the better way to handle it. I told her she was crazy and asked if she really wanted to leave her family for this guy. She said it was a feeling she always had about him and wished to pursue it before marrying me. She told me Joey wanted a relationship with her and that she liked Joey more than she liked me. I asked if she was screwing his friends too, and she called me crazy. I told her I had to ask because I knew she'd been riding around with them. She said Joey would sometimes call her to pick his friends up and give them a ride somewhere. I asked if she was now some kind of free Uber, and she just rolled her eyes. She said it just happened, and I replied, whatever. My wife said she wanted out of the marriage because she didn't want to be married to me while thinking about someone else. I reminded her that she couldn't date Joey at the time because he was already dating Tracy, and we were still together. I asked her what Tracy would think about her wanting to be with Joey. She said they were just casually dating at the time, and Tracy wouldn't care now. I told her that might be true, but Tracy would think less of her as a friend, and she would be right. My wife said she didn't want to argue and wanted to end this on good terms. After that, she left with Claire, who kept peeking her head in, and then drove back to God knows where. As much as I didn't want to agree with my wife, she was right. I would hate being married to her, knowing she'd rather be with another guy. She was delusional, but I'd let her find that out herself. After that, living in the house by myself was even harder. I was pissed off with this embarrassment. Is this what relationships are like now? Is it that easy to throw your marriage away? I honestly thought being married for 9 years meant we didn't have to worry about these things. When Monday came, I called off work to meet with a lawyer and filed for divorce. Someone said I could get alimony from my wife's nail salon, and the lawyer confirmed that if the kids wanted to live with me, it was doable. My mom has been a big help with the kids, but I found out she spoiled them while they were with her, and also told them that my wife was leaving the family to go live somewhere else. When my oldest asked me, all I could do was shake my head. Thanks to my mom, I had to tell them, and they didn't take it well. Even though my mom did that, it fell in my favor. After picking up my kids, we drove past Joey's house, and I showed them where Mom wanted to live. I asked if they wanted to live there with her. They both looked at the rickety house with a bunch of guys standing on the porch and said no. I asked if they were sure, and my oldest said, not for $1 million. On my lunch break today, I called my wife and told her I had filed for divorce. She said okay and wanted to come over to talk to the kids. I told her my mom was picking them up from school today because I had things to do. My wife said she really wanted to talk to them, and I said she could come over when I get home, and I'd ask my mom to bring them back. She asked to just pick up the kids, and I told her if she wanted to see them so bad, go to my mom's house and pick them up. But it wouldn't be a smart move. My wife got upset and said I always hide behind my mom. I told her if she wanted to see the kids, go to my mom's house if she was bold enough. With a frustrated sigh, she hung up, clearly knowing how petty my mom can be. Since then, I haven't heard from my wife. I sent her one last text saying we only need to talk about the divorce and the kids from now on. Right now, I'm only thinking about my daughter's lives. Just because my wife gave up on them doesn't mean they're alone. I know Joey wouldn't give up his player life. I hope while she's busy with him, she thinks about that. It's not my problem anymore, and I'll let her worry about what might happen. I really want to thank everyone here for their amazing support. I was definitely scared to go down this road, but it made me braver. I've heard stories about people catching their significant other in lies like I did, and even worse, catching them in the act, which would have killed me. I'm definitely coming back from this BS one day. My wife was very flawed, and it showed through her extreme selfishness. How could she break all the standards for him and force me to abide by them? It's a question I've been hearing from good men lately, and it seems unfair. This is my last update, and I want to thank you guys one more time. Some hoes are just for the streets. Let's get a couple of reactions before we call it a day. Crash Team says, sorry you're going through this. In case you don't already know, you can get a co-parenting app and communicate with your ex about the kids exclusively through the app. Get one that's approved by the county handling the divorce and custody, so anything on the app is admissible in court. That way, if your ex tries to lie about you or make you out to be abusive to her or the kids, you have proof she's lying. As she lies to the kids about you, text her about it on the app. Whatever she says is admissible. Make sure all communications about visitation are through the app. If she skips out on visitation often, and you or your mom take care of the kids most of the time, your ex has to pay you child support. Your attorney should know which apps are approved by the county. Good luck, bro.